Hi, and welcome to this week's In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric, Executive Director. Thank you very much for joining us for this conversation. We're going to open this show by having a conversation with someone we haven't had a chance to talk to for a while, Joanna Hahn with the Indiana State Museums, specifically near us in Fountain City, the Levi and Catherine Coffin interpretive sites. But you are part of the whole museum function that's out there, multiple sites in multiple places, and we're going to hear a little bit about that. Thank you for being with us. Appreciate you taking some time.
Well, thanks for the invitation. I appreciate being here.
Always glad to do it. Let's start, for those who have not had a chance to meet you, talk to you, a little bit of your background, how you started, and what got you into museums.
Yeah. Well, I joke sometimes when I get that question that I stumbled into this career because I graduated college and thought I'd be a teacher.
Okay.
But I discovered the field of museum education. Museums were really, by the early 2000s, really starting to, at the university level, broaden, opportunities for learning outside the classroom. So when I graduated, I was hired on part-time at the Indiana State Museum in downtown Indianapolis. And I thought, well, this will get me by. I can still do education, then I'll become a teacher. But I fell in love with it. And in less than a year, I got hired full-time there and spent 13 years working with, I can't tell you, thousands of school kids that would come visit the Indiana State Museum all year round during the school year. So providing summer camp opportunities and on-site workshops for classes to come and to experience the museum a different way. So, another sort of unique opportunity came my way that I wasn't looking for career-wise, and that was becoming historic site administrator, working at a small house museum. We have 11 state historic sites in the Indiana State Museum and Historic Site System. And in 2016, the Levi and Catherine Coffin State Historic Site was transitioning from being a museum that was volunteer-led to one that was going to be fully operated by our museum system. And I had recently moved to Muncie to be closer to family and had been commuting to Indianapolis, and I got to thinking, I don't really like that drive. I love my job and I love what I work for.
Sure.
So, what other opportunities were out there? And just one day it just sort of clicked in my head. Why not think about transitioning to being a site manager in one of our sites? So that's how that happened. And I came on board officially in the fall when the interpretive center that would open later in December was about to open. So I helped to get that building ready, help with the installation of exhibits, and I can't remember all else, but really getting to know the Coffins and their story, since that's where my career was going.
Right.
And so that's where I've been now 8 years, because we're 2025, so I'm almost 9 years in fully. So like I said, I stumble into it, but I feel like I'm in my dream job.
The educational piece that you were working toward, it sounds like that is still front and center in a lot of what you tend to have a chance to do.
So I see my role more in like the public history sphere, and what's great about public history is you are using the resources that you have and the knowledge you have to bring that history to the public. So we do that in a variety of ways. Folks can come and see an exhibit, but they get a guided tour. We do programming where we offer talks that we do or bring special speakers in. We do it through, blog posts, presenting at conferences, all kinds of ways, right? And that's what I love. I love taking a story, and it's got to be a story you're passionate about, right? If you're going to tell the same story for a long time.
Sure.
So I found that story, thankfully. But it's about having that passion and bringing it to the public and helping them understand why it's an important story, too.
Talk about a little bit more about kind of the museum piece of this. You mentioned there are 11 sites outside of the one here in Fountain City. I have to say I probably haven't been in any of the others. Can you tell us about a couple that are close to us that maybe folks haven't had a chance to take a look at?
So one of the things I like about the region I'm in here in East Central Indiana is if you go straight north 1 hour on US 27 to Geneva and Adams County, we have the Limberlost State Historic Site that's associated with Indiana author and naturalist Gene Stratton Porter. So there are people that are big fans of her writing. And so she did a lot of that and was inspired a lot by the nature that was around her in places like Geneva. So there's a historic house there that tells that part of her story and her life in Indiana. And if you go straight south, just outside of Brookville in Metamora in Franklin County, we got the Whitewater Canal State Historic Site. So I actually have people who visit that will do one site in the morning and do another site in the afternoon because we're so close.
Okay.
And stop in places like Richmond and have lunch and those kinds of things. So, but we're all over the state of Indiana except for the northwest region, that area around Lafayette, the Calumet area. That's the only part of Indiana we currently do not have a state historic site.
Have you been to all of them?
Okay. So officially, no. I still have one left on my list.
Oh, okay.
There's the Angel Mound State Historic Site outside of Evansville, Indiana, and that is a Mississippian Native American historic site. Like close to us would be Mound State Park in Anderson, Madison County. You can go, you can see these mounds that were built Native Americans. They have that at Angel Mounds. And I was going to go this fall, but then something came up and I couldn't make it. But they just opened a new visitor center with new experiences. So sometime this year, I've got to fit in a day's drive to get down to Evansville and see that wonderful site.
It's a lot easier with 69 being open, I think.
That's what I heard. But we'll see what that's like.
Okay. We're having a chance to speak with Joanna Hahn from the Indiana State Museums, works specifically with the Levi and Catherine Coffin Historic Site in Fountain City. Appreciate the time that you're giving us. You came here as it was opening. Talk about that transition and what you have seen in your 9 years in terms of visitors, where they're coming from. It's a small community, and people go, how many folks are actually finding that place?
Yeah, well, people get confused sometimes when they come to Fountain City. They think they're going to see maybe a city like Richmond in size, and it's really a community of only 700. But that transition, from what the site was, as I mentioned, was volunteer driven. It was only seasonal, so it was only open maybe 6 months a year for visitors. I can't tell you how many people who've come saying, I've been trying to come here for years, and every time I did, it was closed. And so that was one of the big reasons for this transition, because then with the opportunity that we have to be open year-round, having staff, we're much more accessible. So visitorship, we average between 8,000 and 10,000 visitors a year. We have a good mix of folks from around the state of Indiana, but also out of state. I mean, obviously we're close to Ohio,
right?
So it's not hard for Ohioans to come here. But I think there was 1 year, I haven't tracked it in a while, there was 1 year we had visitors from 42 of the 50 states. Okay. And I thought that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So we definitely have an appeal. The history of the Underground Railroad is that part of that history that fascinates people. And we're just extremely lucky here in Wayne County to have one of the best provenanced homes, meaning with the evidence we have, the stories we have, the experience we can provide people, it's pretty unique. And we have that right here in Wayne County, and we're very lucky to have that.
How much of that history is written?
Well, most of what we impart comes from Levi Coffin himself. So we're fortunate that he wrote an autobiography before he passed away. So much of what we do, especially in the guided tour, when we're in the house, much of that is coming from Levi and the experience he had, as well as imparting what he experienced with and learned from freedom seekers in their escape north. So we're able to go into those stories as well. So now, of course, we do other research. Sure. Because there's some stories out there. It's like, is this, the Underground Railroad, as much as I say it fascinates people, it can be very confusing because over the years a lot of myths have developed. I mean, I have a few people that show up and think they're going to see a train. Okay. Right? So I always hate to disappoint them, but it gives us a chance to help them really understand what we're talking about when we're speaking of the Underground Railroad. So we have to be as close to the history as we can get. But there's a lot of what we know, there's also a lot that we don't know. So we have to be very clear with our visitors when questions come up. When we say we don't know, it's not because we haven't been trying to find the answer. We have.
Sure.
We just honestly at this time don't know.
There's some of that history that may truly have just been lost over time.
It wasn't. These aren't individual. I shouldn't say that. I say this is a history that wasn't meant to be recorded while it was happening.
Right.
So you're dealing with a history that there aren't as many surviving records as there could be. But we're fortunate when you've got people like Levi Coffin and even some freedom seekers that did speak up and write their own version of events not their own version, but they're telling us their version of what their life was like. And so, and then we look at newspapers, we look at even church records. You know, we try not to leave any stone unturned if we can. So,
what drew you to the story? You mentioned earlier, if you're going to tell a story over and over again, I'm just curious, what drew you to the story and what keeps you interested in helping the public understand this history?
There's several. The Coffins were, we look at them today, we see them as heroes. But what makes them heroes? Like what, you know? So it allows me an opportunity to go through that and say, well, when the Coffins were doing this, they could be considered criminal. There's one historian that says the Coffin House may have been the center of the most criminal activity in the United States in the 1830s and 40s because of how many people they were helping, right? Okay. But we don't see them that way today. So, but it's helping to make sure that folks understand that, and I like to be able to bring that to light for them. The fact that you get to literally stand where history took place. And people sometimes make emotional connections with the historic stories they're hearing. And I just feel like being a part of that and being able to provide that is important to people's understanding of history. And so that to me is just to be able to stand and tell that story where that story took place. That just means a lot for a historian. Now, a little bit personally, the Coffins are Quakers. I am descended from Quakers that lived in Wayne County and Henry County. Okay. So, I mean, at the same time the Coffins were doing this. So I don't know, there's just something that draws me to that on a personal level as well. And so I think for where I want to be as a historian, I want to tell a story that inspires people and impacts people. And I feel that this is one that does, so.
You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11, or maybe you're watching us on our Facebook page, our YouTube page. It's a Sunday morning and you're listening to the program on G1013 or their sister station, 1490 AM, 100.9 FM, ESPN Radio, WKBV. However you're checking us out, we appreciate you spending some time with us. We're spending time with Joanna Hahn from the Indiana State Museums, talking about the specific site where she is, but the State Museums really as a whole. A gem for Indiana, giving us a glimpse of public history, life as it was, and how it has evolved. Heading into February, I mentioned Heart Month. Yeah. It is also Black History Month, which it ramps things up for you all. You're open year-round now, as you say, but it helps ramp things up for you. It is also a month that has one of your 3 free days in it. The museum does cost to get in on a regular basis, but 3 times a year you all open that up. So talk a little bit about that. Yeah, no, so we do 3 free admission days each year. Our next one, we just hosted a free day on Martin Luther King Day, Monday, January 20th. The next one is President's Day on Monday, February 17th. And we normally don't open on Mondays. Okay. You know, we're normally closed. So we'll be open to the public on February 17th from 10 to 5. And so now, sometimes with those free admission days, they can be pretty busy. So we encourage people to call in advance, let us know when they'd like to come, and we'll set them up with a tour time that works with the time of their visit. We do offer, I think, 6 or 7 tour times, where we typically only offer 3 during most days. That's how busy we know we can be. But that allows you access to the Interpretive Center, which is self-guided, and to receive that guided tour in the Coffin Home. So, but along with that, you know, it's President's Day, and it's just not President's Day without a president being on site. So we have Abraham Lincoln visiting us.
during the course of the day, and he will be doing a talk at 10 and 1 o'clock. Now, there is an additional fee for that. I can't, unfortunately, offer that program for free. But it's a fantastic program. So if you love Lincoln, which around President's Day is just after his birthday, so if you're a Lincoln fan or just enjoy a good program with some good stories, our interpreter does a fantastic job of doing that.
Talk a little bit about how you kind of balance that, because your tour, your tours in general, take a little bit of time. You're suggesting probably that people take an hour and a half?
Yeah.
What's your, to get through your normal tour?
Yeah, I know. The guided tour, now I always warn people, we try to keep it to an hour, but if you have a lot of questions, it may take a little longer to get to lunch, you know? So, but, and people laugh just like that, but it's true. We want to make sure that while folks are on the tour, any questions, any confusion they have, this is their opportunity to ask those questions. And so sometimes that can lead to like a broader discussion. And so if people are willing to have those broader discussions, we're comfortable with having it with them. So, and sometimes we have tours where people are like, thank you, had a great time, you know, they didn't have any questions, which then makes me think, I think we did a good job. I think we had all the important points they were probably looking for. But generally, a general visit is like 2.5 hours if you include spending time in the interpretive center, which is self-guided, so you can go at it at your own pace. And what the interpretive center has, we have an exhibit called Soul Seeking Safety, which helps to put the coffin story in a broader national context. So, because the Underground Railroad didn't just happen in Fountain City, Indiana. It was happening in multiple places across the United States. And so this is an opportunity for you to understand that broader context, as well as learn a few more stories of some of the freedom seekers that found their way through Fountain City on their way north. And then we also have a wonderful kind of, we call it an orientation film, but it's a 10-minute film that helps to provide some visuals using actors and such, showing the coffins and highlighting, again, a few more stories from Levi's book. So, yeah.
February 17th, busy day, open, free day. Plus, you've got Abraham Lincoln Inn, and there is an additional cost for that. You can visit the website if you want more information on that cost. February 28th, Standing Up Against Slavery, the story of Polly Strong.
Yeah, this is probably a story that anybody who's a native-born Hoosier may not know much of. When people are educated about our state's history, they're always told in 1816, when we became a state, we were a free state, so there was no slavery. But most people may not realize that when we were a state in 1820, there were still a couple hundred individuals listed as slaves in the state of Indiana. Polly Strong was an individual who sued for her freedom in 1816. She was enslaved to a man in Vincennes, Indiana, where most of these individuals were enslaved, and there's a long history why that area in particular. But Polly was very much aware that with the Constitution and her potential freedom, and this was one of the first Supreme Court cases our state Supreme Court heard when we became a state. So she sued for her freedom, which she did achieve. And so that eventually, it took another 10 plus years, but eventually by that time, on at least census data, we don't see anybody listed as an enslaved individual living in Indiana as a resident.
Okay. So you've got that. And then you move in. And obviously, during the month of February, you all are much busier. Lots of people coming in. That's one of those months. But you all are open year-round.
Right.
So as you look beyond February, is there a couple of things that you want to mention that the audience maybe want to be aware of?
Well, it's getting to be one of our busiest seasons, and that's school field trip season.
Okay.
So
I didn't know that was a season.
It is. Well, for some of us in sites, it feels like that's all we do in April and May. I call it our rinse, wash, and repeat cycle, because we show up, what's the school group today? We do a lot of field trips, mostly for 3rd and 4th graders, and a lot of them from Wayne County schools and from surrounding areas. And I have schools that come as far as Indianapolis and Fort Wayne to visit. So I highly recommend in the months of April and May, if you want to visit, call ahead. We'll let you know how busy the day is going to be. Once school's out, it's not a problem. So by Memorial Day weekend, we won't be quite as busy. But I just hate turning people away who just drive in and being right on US 27, and then people drive by like, what is that? Or they see the sign we have on the exit on I-70. They're like, oh, let's go check that out. And then they drive in. I'm just like, sorry, I've got 100 fourth graders here. I've got to take care of them first. Can you come back later? And I encourage them to do and go have lunch in Richmond or go see another institution. Or so it's going to be busy. Our May is already totally booked, actually, with school field trips from May 1st through the last day of school. So we're pretty booked. And now I have to book April for those that are trying to get into May. Anyway, don't give up. If you are like, I want to do a field trip, call us. We'll do our best to work with you.
Okay.
So,
a couple of things in March that you've got coming up. Hoosiers reading Frederick Douglass on March 8th. Is that from 2 to 4?
Yes.
And what is that?
So we have a great relationship with an office at IU Indianapolis called the Frederick Douglass Papers. And they edit Douglass's papers and his speeches and print it for various reasons. And so we work with one of their scholars to come and to do a talk around one of Douglass's speeches. And Frederick Douglass was a major proponent for female suffrage. And this is before, this is before the Civil War. He was one of the few men to attend the first Women's Rights Convention in Seneca Falls, New York in 1848. So one of his first real speeches that was recorded or written down was speaking on women's suffrage. So Dr. McGivigan, who's our scholar from IU Indianapolis, is going to come and we'll do an actual reading of the speech. So everybody will get a chance to participate and speak Douglass's words and then have a conversation about it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. And then on March 19th, Women and the Underground Railroad, Female Freedom Seekers from Levi Coffin's book.
Yeah, so I'll be giving that talk. And so if you want to, again, hear how passionate I am about these stories, there are a number of women who escaped on their own. Without the help of other individuals and often without the help of the Underground Railroad for part of that time. So I'll be highlighting some of those stories. And in that talk, not only will I be speaking to their experience with the Underground Railroad, but also highlighting what their experiences were as females who were enslaved. And helping people understand some of the decisions these women's made over the course of their escape and to see what questions people have about those experiences as well.
Levi and Catherine Coffin were honored by being part of the Abolition
The National Abolition, yeah.
Hall of Fame. Can you give us a little bit of background on that? Because it happened just this past October. So when I started the site in 2016 and started to research other sites and museums that had similar interpretive themes as what we do, I found the Garrett Smith estate. And Garrett Smith was an abolitionist in Peterborough, New York. So it's kind of in the center of the state of New York. And that is where the National Abolition Hall of Fame is, and which was started by a group of volunteers. And I can't remember exactly when they started, but around 2016, 2018, they started accepting applications from anyone in the United States that wanted to submit a man or woman for consideration into the National Abolition Hall of Fame. So it's housed in Peterborough. Okay. In connection with the Garrett Smith estate. So I immediately thought, well, the Coffins aren't in it. Yeah. So I have to fix that. And then COVID happened. It takes a lot of work to write one nomination, and I was going to write two because I wanted both of them nominated if I could. So it took a process, but in 2023, I submitted both. And was a little afraid that they may only choose one, because how often can you, I'm sure they don't accept nominations of two people from the same nominator. But anyway, was grateful to hear that spring that not only were they excited that somebody finally nominated the Coffins, because they're like, we don't know why it has taken this long, but that they were going to accept both of them for the same year. So they made an exception. Nice. So I had an opportunity to go out to Peterborough, New York in October, attend the nomination ceremony, give a talk on both of them. Oh, cool. And meet some other people there were two other individuals that were nominated in the same class for the class of 2024. And just met some fantastic people that are doing amazing history and work in places like New York and Canada and Massachusetts, and the people came from all over. So it was fantastic. Marvelous. That's great. Yeah. Thank you for doing that for the community. Again, shining a spotlight on what we have here locally. We've got about 3 minutes left. I know I've peppered you with a lot of questions during this time frame, but is there something that you want the community to know about you, about the Indiana State Museums, about your particular site that I haven't asked you about? I'm going to give you the floor and let you go. Is there something that you want folks to know that
well, how
you
about I
haven't
share what my favorite state historic site that is not the Coffin site?
Okay.
And my favorite state historic site to visit, and it's any time of year, I mentioned Gene Stratton Porter's Limberlost home.
Yes.
But we actually have 2 Gene Stratton Porter sites. And we have a second one further north on Lake Sylvan, Indiana.
I've never heard of it.
And that's part of the reason why it's one of my favorites. This house literally sits on one of those picturesque northern Indiana lakes. That was her second home. So she started off with the home in Geneva, and then some things started to change around Geneva, and she goes, I'm going to move further north, where the farming isn't as big and such, and she built this beautiful home on Lake Sylvan. And I've been up there in the fall, I've been there in the summer. The gardens, if you love gardens, beautiful gardens, because Gene Stratton Porter loved her flowers, and just a beautiful setting on the lake. But the tour, both homes give fantastic tours. Gene is such a phenomenal woman that I don't think, again, a lot of Hoosiers know about. And so I fell in love with her story and can see why she wanted to build a house on that lake, because I'm jealous of the site manager all the time saying, oh man, if there was another site I'd be at, it'd be this one, just so I can look at the lake all day long.
It's frozen over right now, probably.
It is. They actually shared a picture where people walk, because it has finally frozen thick enough. Ice fishing is very big up there. People were walking all over and driving on the ice too. That would worry me a little bit. I don't think I would trust that. But anyway, so that's my favorite. But we have fantastic sites. We have historic homes on the Ohio River. I talked about Angel. Another favorite is the New Harmony site. And that's just north of Evansville. And New Harmony is where we had several groups try to create utopian societies. But it's a beautiful community. If you're looking for a good getaway, I mean, New Harmony is just a great place to visit. So anyway, I can talk about our sites all day long.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll have you back and we'll get into it a little bit more.
I'll be happy. I'll be that ambassador.
I think it's great for people to find out a little bit more, particularly me. I haven't been to all of them. So check it out. IndianaMuseums.org. You can find out about sites in Indianapolis as well as some of the regional sites, specific the museum.org. IndianaMuseum.org. Also check them out on Facebook, other social media site.
Just Facebook.
Just Facebook is what they're using.
Yeah.
So check it out. Be sure to look at some of the events that they have coming up at the Levi and Catherine Coffin House State Historic Site in Fountain City. Thank you very much for the time. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon. And again, IndianaMuseum.org if you need more information. We'll take a break. We'll be back with more In Focus in just a moment on WGTV, Channel 11.
The Levi and Catherine Coffin State Historic Site in Fountain City is open Wednesday through Sunday and some holidays. Enjoy a guided tour through the home of Quakers Levi and Catherine Coffin, where freedom seekers found refuge. Then see the site's interpretive center and learn more about the history of the Underground Railroad. Reservations for tours and special programs can be made online at www.indianamuseum.org or by calling the site at 765-847-1691.
At Richmond Power and Light, we're dedicated to serving our community and restoring power during storms, no matter the time or day. We understand that losing power is inconvenient and frustrating, which is why we offer the quickest and easiest way to report an outage through SmartHub or by calling. Stay informed about the latest outage updates by following us on Facebook. Trust Richmond Power and Light to provide you with reliable and efficient service.
Hi, and welcome back to this week's In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. Yeah, I know, I changed clothes in between commercial breaks. Actually, I spoke to my first guest on a different day, and for this one, we are obviously not in the studio anymore, and I had to don just a little bit of red because we're talking about some Indiana University East sports, and I don't get to talk sports a lot on this show. One of the last times we had a chance to talk IU East sports was probably close to 3 years ago. We talked to Kyle, who was SID and assistant athletic director, and Travis Lang, who was the voice of the Red Wolves at the time. This time we have the big guy. We don't get him very often at all. Joe Griffin, who is athletic director of Indiana University East Red Wolf Sports, and also in his first or second year.
I finished up last year a little bit with men's basketball. I just took it over full time this year.
Okay, so you're not going to throw that back to somebody? You're going to hang on to that one for a while?
For a little bit, just for a little bit, not long term, but at least a little bit. But just to get a little stabilized, that I get going back. We've had a lot of turnover with Tiffany leaving, getting a nice position, and then Alexa coming in and having a baby and everything. So there was a little bit of a gap there that needed to be filled, and I filled that gap. So.
Joe Griffin, athletic director, Indiana University East Sports, and Bruno Amorim the Silva. How close am I?
Great, you did great.
Okay.
Yep.
Coach Bruno is what we're going to go with from here, who is the coach of the newest sport here at Indiana University East, and we'll talk about that, some men's volleyball coming. But let's start with Joe. Let's start with you. A little bit of background on you, background in sports, and what brought you to Indiana University East?
Well, this is my 38th year in collegiate athletics, and I've coached anywhere from women's volleyball, actually, a little bit. Wasn't great at it, but I did it for a while, to men and women's basketball. I've done men and women's golf, and I've done men's soccer in the past. But I've done a lot of sports, a lot of things. Have not coached too much full-time for a while, so it's been a little bit to get back into it. Really enjoying it, really enjoying young ladies on the team. My wife is from the area, and we wanted to get back somewhere on the East Coast, coming from the West Coast. I've been all over the country in my journeys, and it happened to open up at IU East, and applied for the job and got it. So basically, my wife grew up right across the line in Ohio, so was coming back home, help with the family farm, that type of thing. So it's been a really good transition for us. Raised our youngest one here. The other ones were kind of gone by then, by the time we moved back. But it's been great, and IU East and Richmond is a great community to be in.
Talk a little bit about what the growth in athletics has been like during your time here, because I remember when there were 4 or 5 sports or so on here. There was women's volleyball, there was men's basketball, there wasn't even a women's basketball team. The men's volleyball that's opening up this spring is your 17th? How many sports do you have now?
It's our 17th sport. Since I came in, there's been 2 growths. The first one is just in the number of sports.
Okay.
And also the other one is just basically how serious are we going to take it. We had some sports before, but there wasn't a lot into it as far as scholarship money or expectations. So I really wanted to raise that up.
Okay.
So that's how track became a lot more, I don't know what the word is, but professional or more serious or along those words, along that line. And then we started soccer, both men and women's soccer. Women's basketball came in right when I first came in. That was already kind of started, but I've had Tiffany Selhorst came and did a great job for us, had a lot of success. And then we just kind of broadened it out a little bit at a time, and esports was the last one. Took us a little while to get that going, but that's been very good for campus. I think, in fact, that's one of the main reasons you'd want esports or the campus activity. And then we talked about something in the spring, and baseball and softball, we're not ready for that yet.
Okay.
We'll see if that's ever going to come down the road.
But there are those teams within the conference, correct?
Yes. In fact, within IU, there are some of those teams that host that. But facilities is always something we look at, and that's pretty tough for us. But anyway, we had a gym. We had a spring open for any kind of indoor sport, and we talked about men's volleyball, and we jumped with it, and we happen to have a pretty good coach right around here, so everything worked out for us to bring Bruno on, just be the first coach for our men's volleyball program.
Bruno, great way to turn toward you. Talk a little bit about your background. Introduce yourself to our audience.
Awesome. My name is Bruno Amorim da Silva. I'm from Brazil, São Paulo. I started playing volleyball on a professional level when I was 16 years old. Played in 14 different super leagues around the world in different countries. I met my wife in Switzerland playing volleyball as well. She's from the area, Centerville, and that's how I came out here.
Talk about what your involvement is beyond just Indiana University East sports, because you're still involved outside of the campus.
Correct. I still do play volleyball professionally whenever the opportunity presents. Most of the time, summertime, the professional beach tour in the States. Coach Centerville High School for about 3 years as well. So whatever there's an opportunity for me to help grow this sport that gave me so much throughout the years, I'm there.
Talk a little bit about what it's like to start a men's college sport in a state where there, I don't think, are a lot of men's volleyball teams to recruit from.
Correct. Yeah, the men's volleyball is growing in this area. Finally, we are a little bit behind on that process, but it's a blessing. It's a blessing. It felt like it was at the right time and the right moment for me to kind of slow down my playing career to start coaching, and no better place to start.
Talk a little bit about the team that you've been able to assemble. I think a number of them are from the Indianapolis area.
Correct. Most of the players we have is from Indiana. Right? And that's one of those things that I chose to do. It's a sport that, have given me everything. And I see basketball, football, baseball, hockey here in the States being very popular, but not men's volleyball. Mm-hmm. The area I grew up in Brazil, there was not a lot of volleyball either. And somebody gave me that opportunity. And I want us to grow the sport in our state. I want to represent our state, our town, our school best way we can in the national scenario.
This is a sport that people are familiar with in terms of the women's game. Can you talk to us about how the men's and women's game is different, if it is?
The height of the net, obviously, it's higher. The concept of the game is still the same. Just the power, the speed, the physicality. It's amazing. People that never had the chance to watch men's volleyball this close is gonna get excited.
We've watched it, the Olympics, particularly beach volleyball, as you mentioned. What's the difference between playing in sand and playing on a court like your guys are going to be here?
The environment, the weather is a huge F factor on the sand. We don't have that problem indoor. And then whenever we're playing outdoors, it's all around the sport. You got to become a better volleyball player, right? Indoor, you can kind of stay in a position, but beach volleyball, it's pass, set, and hit. You got to touch the ball every play. Indoor, you don't have that luxury.
Women's feel a little bit same size, different size for the men?
Everything is the same.
Everything is the same.
Of the net and the physicality change.
Oh my, that's gonna. I got hit with a volleyball once in warm-ups going to an IU East rib. Well, I don't think I'd want to do that with the men's, because I was seeing stars when I got hit when the women were doing it, let alone when the men. And you're talking about the power in that same size field.
Correct. Some of those volleyballs, they go across the net about 80 miles to 110 miles per hour. So watch out if you're out there eating a popcorn. Keep your eyes on the ball, because that thing's coming fast.
The men, Joe, are playing most of their games early in the season, early January, early February, are actually away. There is a home game, I think, coming up later this month. But you all are really pointing toward the conference opener. Talk about the River States Conference, which IU East has been a part of for a number of years, and what the conference is like in terms of men's volleyball right now.
Well, men's volleyball, we had 5 teams in our conference, and we've added 3 teams from another conference who didn't have enough. And in fact, I think Georgetown was national champs last year.
Correct.
they're now in our conference.
Georgetown, Georgia?
Georgetown College in Lexington,
Okay.
or near Lexington. So the level of play is really about as high as it can go. So we are in a very tough conference to start right off, but watching the men play and practice and everything, it is pretty amazing how hard they hit the ball. There's not a lot of giving, back and forth and back and forth. That's usually maybe a couple times, 3 times. Somebody's cranking on it and it's going down. So it's a lot of fun that way to watch it. But the conferences, we've got 8 teams. It's good competition, really good competition. It's an up and coming sport in the NEI and in our area. And really Columbus, Ohio, and Indianapolis and Cincinnati, they're all it's all growing. This is a growing sport. So it's nice to be in the front of it, pretty early in the front of it. So it's here to stay. It's here to stay.
You're in early, you get some early recruiting. Talk about what recruiting, not just for men's volleyball, but for all of your sports are like. Are you locked into a region? Can you go internationally? And how do you convince kids to come to IU East and play?
We allow a little bit of international limited for the men's volleyball team. We've done it for a few teams just to try to be more competitive right away. But it's one of those things. It's recruiting. You go out hard and heavy and try to convince them to come. And if nothing else, we have a Bruno to try to help sell that with his experience level and that you don't get that every day. So that's a nice little gift for them.
But even just for some of your other sports, you've got 16 other sports, you've got coaches out there recruiting. You're keeping some of the local kids home. I know there are some local Wayne County, Fayette County students that have been a part of your various teams through the years. Talk about mixing those local kids with kids from the region, with kids from out of state.
Yeah, we use every means available to us, and we're somewhat limited. We're a state university, so we just can't go everywhere. But we have Indiana, Ohio specifically, but then Michigan and Illinois and a few other Western teams we hit to try to, because of the cost, trying to keep the cost down as much as possible. It's a busy work. Everybody's after the same kids, so it's just really hard. So a little bit of salesmanship. The IU brand is a great brand. It's a great selling point for us to help with the athletes. But it's hard across the board anymore with transfer policies and NIL. You will see probably some of our more established sports, and even with Bruno, looking at more transfers to come in and go from one place. Maybe they weren't happy, it wasn't the right fit. Then they'll come and try ours, and hopefully we're the right fit. We've been a very good fit for most of the international we've had come in here. They come in and they don't seem to, they like it, so they stay.
Okay.
But the world of intercollegiate athletics with NIL and transport portal and everything else, the mentality is totally different now than it was even 5 years ago.
We've heard a lot about that on the Division I. Obviously, you can't watch a Division I game without hearing about NIL, transfer portal. Has that carried through Division II, Division III, and into the NAIA? And what's the difference between NCAA and NAIA?
The NCAA, especially Division I and some of Division II, they have a lot of money. They're giving out a lot of money, and we don't have that. Most NAIA teams, I think the average NIL deal for NAIA a couple years ago was $500. So that's pretty small potatoes compared to what some of the bigger ones.
Sure.
But it's going to change the landscape of intercollegiate athletics. I think at some point I wouldn't be surprised if the Division I's, the Big Four, the Power Four kind of goes off on their own on a couple sports. I would not be surprised to see that. There's just so much money involved. We're still down here at this level. We're still pretty much, it's not totally based on money as much. Now, saying that, money is harder to come by. That's what helps with being a state university.
Okay.
But we do limit where we go, how far out we go to recruit. Some sports can go a little further. Some sports don't. The funding is all that way. But it really comes down to our coaches. You know, if you're in it for the money, coaches at our level, you're not staying long. So there's a lot more to it.
Bruno's laughing.
Yeah.
Are you looking for a new men's volleyball coach?
You don't get rich coaching too much at our level. So, but it's the relationships with a chance to impact student athletes and the athletes. That is probably the main factor. Most of our coaches are doing what they do.
Bruno, talk about what it's like building that relationship with a high school student, building a relationship with their parents, because that's also part of it. Right. Talking to them, getting them to trust that you are going to watch out for their young man in this case, and get him to what they're hoping, which is an IU degree, which is what they'll walk across the stage with.
Right. For me, my relationship with the players, I'm still a volleyball player when I'm not here at IU's coaching. So I try to approach them the same way that my mentors, previous players, guide them through that process, right? I raise my voice here and there, but most part of the time it's just getting closer to them and say, hey, this is not the route we want to go. You got to focus on the student. You're here first to be a student, not to play volleyball. It's just a conversation. I'm a people's person, living all over the place. It did help me be more open to suggestions and, to different voices and approaches.
What's the most fun part of the game for you? I'm curious.
Fun part of the game?
What's the most fun part of the game for you? Because you've played a long time. You're coaching now on the professional level as well as here on the college level. What do you enjoy?
The process.
What do you mean?
Well, that we wake up 4:50 a.m. every morning to come to train.
Ooh.
And at the beginning, the players were a little bit, scared. I would say scared. I'm like, 4:15 in the morning, finally, and jumping. Like, no. We're going to go through a process where we're going to get our body ready for that, used to being up that early and whatnot. Then, after 3 months, we're going to sit down and have a conversation, see if the route you still want to go. I did ask them if they would like to practice early in the day. They're like, no, we like their 5 a.m. better. Some of their girlfriends who are like 200 miles away, they wake up at the same time. A couple of parents of some of my players, they waking up early to get a workout in, so it's fun. It has been really cool to see those players enjoying the process and struggling together, having fun together,
Because you're bringing in some players, obviously, who have not played together, didn't know each other, and you're trying to bring them into a new sport. What's the kind of culture you're trying to build, not only in your program, and then can you mention that for IU East as a whole?
I want people to be comfortable on their own skin, right? And being an athlete, right, and learning that discipline throughout the process, I think helps. Being comfortable where you are, with your limitations and your ceiling, how high you can go and whatnot. We try to keep everything simple, and I try to be as honest as possible with them, and have worked so far. We have a great AD that supports our cause. He supports our idea. My wife, Kim McConaughey from the women's volleyball, also have a huge impact on what we're trying to create. I think all I have done, me being here, is good, right? But having Joe, Kim, and most of the people around us is going to make us great. And it's not about winning or losing. If most of the players that they are here, right, if all of them graduate and the goal is for them to be successful, regardless of volleyball. Some of them, they are not going to play for the rest of their lives. Sure. Or be able to make a living playing the sport they love. It's just about the process and help them have a good time and be there for them when they're not doing well, and learn.
And you hear that a lot, particularly you're watching some of the Division I schools and you see the NCAA commercial. Most of our students are not going to go on to be professional. At this level, there's probably even a smaller percentage that will go on to be professional. So talk about what the athletic department here at IU East is like, how you all are able to help these students move, grow, understand whatever is on the other side of this, and the culture that you've tried to build as an AD for the IU East athletics program.
Well, you're right. There's very few at our level go professional. Well, we've had a couple. A couple still are playing basketball overseas and doing quite well, men's basketball. Most of our athletes aren't looking to go professional. There's a few of them think they maybe want to, but most of them aren't. But what we're building here is the things you learn in the classroom. I like to say our athlete teams are in the classroom when they're playing a sport. And I got that from an Ivy League school. So we want to teach some of those other things: team building, being part of something bigger than yourself, working hard, being a good winner and being a good loser, because you don't always win all your games. Kids get hurt, sometimes season-ending, sometimes career-ending injuries. Help them through those processes. The other thing is that we try to do here, all my teams, I try to have them do community service. I've gotten in trouble because we really don't talk about it much, because I think it's something we should be doing all the time anyway. And we do. We spend hundreds and thousands of hours volunteering throughout Wayne County and the area, just helping other people. Halloween, Christmas, anything like that. We have some group doing something.
We've been out shooting at Christmas time, and we've seen the basketball team or the women's basketball team or something helping out at one of the events in Glen Miller Park.
Yep, that's part of what I tell them. Say, I want you to know how fortunate you are that and help others who maybe need a hand up or an encouraging word or just a smile. Sometimes can make a big difference in people's lives.
We've got probably about 6 or 7 minutes left. I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about the facilities that these athletes are playing in, because you're sharing some facilities almost all around Wayne County.
Yeah, that's the downside of IU East, is the lack of our own facilities. So Richmond High School has been very good, Northeastern in the past, Centerville, we use some of theirs, even across the line at Eaton High School for some of our track and soccer games that we have down there. It's really nice that they were able to share for us, and we've been able to share our cross-country course and our gym with any of them if they need it. We usually are very open to sharing with it.
I know there's an annual high school cross-country meet that's actually held on campus here.
Yes, and we have the community want to use the cross-country course and everything, which is great. It's easy. It's set up, and it's pretty easy to have them help. But we try to collaborate as best we can with everybody, and everybody has needs, and try to work around other people's needs. And our athletic department is growing pretty big. As they're doing what I want them to do. We're trying to get people in the seats and people here on campus. So it's been a lot of fun that way. It's a great community. I wish we had better facilities just in general for the community. But that takes money, and it's hard and all that. So hopefully somewhere in the future we can collaborate with some of the high schools, even other colleges, have something, in the wintertime especially, something for our community and our athletes.
But you're expecting a nice crowd, hopefully, for the opening conference match, February 21st, 6 p.m., I believe is the time. Talk a little bit about what you all are hoping to see for that first conference home meet.
Well, I think the biggest thing I want to look in people's faces when they see how hard they hit the ball. It is pretty amazing. So I walk in, I see them at practice. They practice just before me every morning. So sometimes I go in and watch, and it's like some of those guys are so athletic. It's fun to watch. And a good bunch of guys. Everything, they're getting along, which is all part of it, part of the learning process. And Bruno's doing a good job leading that. We expect it to be a lot of fun, and I think eye-opening for the community.
Bruno, talk about what you're hoping to see. It's a conference match. Obviously, you've seen the excitement with your wife and the women's team. What are you hoping to bring, and what do you want to see that first night?
I'm hoping to bring a lot of noise. I'm hoping to build and to get the exposure for the athletic department for those young players. It's gonna be fun. I can't wait to experience that from the sideline. just coaching and playing with them from the sideline, help as much as I can. But I'm just excited to see people's face in the stands.
What kind of coach are you? Are you one that kind of stalks the sidelines a little bit? Are you pretty reserved, laid back, watching? What are you like? I'm gonna put a counter on you. You know that, don't you?
I am a coach that if I see a bad play happen, I'm cracking up. Cracking up. My players know that, right? So I have fun playing volleyball. It's hard to do something that you love, with a mean face. So there are times they're gonna, hear my voice a little bit deeper, but most of the time, I'm playing with them. I'm calling a play here, the ball's in the air, I call a different play. Sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. You just laugh a little bit and move on. Volleyball is a game of action and reaction. We won't be able to get it right every time, and the focus is always to put all your energy to the next play, regardless who got the point, or regardless if it was a good play or a bad play. You got to move forward and go with our trust and our practice.
Cool. We've got 2 minutes left to go. Obviously, you want people in the seats. If they want to connect with the IU East Red Wolves, any of the sports, how do they do that?
Oh, they can go online if they want to contribute financially. That is always great. They want to come out to a game, just come out to a game. This could be a $7, pretty cheap ticket for the fans. Probably kids come free. We love to have the place full of kids, because that's how you grow love for a sport. If they see it as a young age, you go, I want to do that. But they can come out, they can contact our main switchboard, but contact us through email. But just come on out. I think just show up, and hopefully the gym, we can hold almost 700, so we would love to have 700 in there. That would be exciting.
All right. Should be nice. Coach Bruno, Joe Griffin, thank you all for the time. Greatly appreciate it. If you want to check out what's happening with the IU East Red Wolves on any of their team sports, go to iueastredwolves.com. The game on the February 21st. Hopefully you will be here checking out the game in Lingle Court on the IU East campus. If you can't get there, you'll be able to tune in and watch the game live on WETV Channel 20. That's going to wrap up this week's edition of In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. If you missed any of this program, there'll be a replay tonight at 10:30, tomorrow night at 8, Saturday 8 a.m. and 9 p.m., Sunday 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. The audio of the program can be heard Sunday morning at 6 a.m. on, they'll love this, ESPN Radio, 1490 AM, 100.9 FM, WKBV, and their sister station, G1013. Thank you for watching this week's In Focus. Join me again next week on next Thursday night. As always, I wish you well.